Hello, Facebook. How's everybody doing? Let me know if you can hear me and see me. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to jump on and then we can get started. Say hi if you're here. This is something that has been a long time coming. So many of my clients have asked me to they want to know more details about my personal story and what I've undergone in transforming from sepsis to being in a space of much greater thriving and happiness and ease and flow and confidence. And I have shared snippets of my story here and there all over the place, whether it's in blog posts or just posts on the internet. This is also the time of night that the light just beams in towards me, so I might have to move my camera here and there just so that I don't get lost in the these beautiful light codes that are beaming in from the setting sun. So, hi Karina, how are you, love? So good to see you. I hope you're doing well. So, yeah, I just wanted to offer you guys the opportunity to learn from my story. I feel like, telling stories and hearing one another's stories is a really powerful way to be able to make change and to be motivated toward transformation. So, I started writing my book, and I know that is a modality that a lot of people use to be able to get their story out into the world and to inspire other people and to assist them with being able to move through whatever it is they're dealing with. So I'm doing that. But I also wanted to come on here and just be able to share my story and answer any questions. I'm really an open book, so I'm really okay with sharing anything. That's part of my journey. So feel free to ask away. And and hi, thank you for being here. If you're watching this live or on the replay, I just want to say thank you for taking a moment to listen in to my personal story because this is not something that I mean, there's a lot of things that you can watch on the internet, right? So it doesn't have to be your first choice, and I appreciate that you're just stopping by and spending some time with me. So, all right, so my story. So where does this begin? I've always been very spiritual. I used to go to youth group all the time when I was in high school, and I was very, very involved in the church from the time that I was really young. I grew up Presbyterian, so I loved my church and I loved being part of it. But there were also a lot of things that didn't resonate with me in the church. And I actually loved my wedding because at my wedding, I got to plan my entire ceremony. I got to pick all of the hymns that I loved. I got to pick all of the messages and the prayers, and it was so beautiful because it was so intimate. It was definitely what vibed with my energy, and so that was really the beginning of my spiritual process. And when I was in college, I was involved in the fellowship, the Christian fellowship program. And I appreciated that as well. But again, it did not feel like quite the right fit for me. I didn't fully fit in to that community. And I did get a lot of powerful experiences from that process and from engaging with the people that I engaged with in that space. But there was just something missing, and I would kind of go in and out of being more spiritual, being less spiritual. And when I was really little, I would actually pray a lot and I would blame God because of like things that I was upset about or things that I was angry about. So I always had this really open dialogue with God, but I really didn't I didn't use it in the way that was cultivating a relationship as much as I was just kind of like using it to my advantage, right? And so I think that's a lot of the vision and the way that I looked at spirituality for a long time. But when I would move away from it, it still felt like something was missing, right? And I know that this is a really common theme and a common feeling with light workers, with people who are sharing their light, who are here to raise the vibration of the planet. And they really, feel like they don't quite fit in, maybe even on this planet, or they've tried multiple different social groups or communities and they just don't quite fit in, right? They feel like something's off about them. And so for me, it was really this feeling that no matter how much love I had surrounding me, no matter how much support I had, I still felt a little bit like I wasn't enough, right? And I still felt like there was something wrong with me. Like there was something that didn't help me connect with other people, or there was something off. And I felt very lonely and a little bit empty inside. And hi, Katie. So good to see you. It's been so long. So good to see you. So yeah, so I felt like a little lonely in this level of emptiness, even though I had all the love and support around me, right? So then after college, I decided that I was going to go to the seminary to become a minister. That's what I wanted to do. And from the time that I was little, I had always had this dream that I wanted to be a therapist. But I was drawn so strongly to the spiritual piece, and I was so in and out with it, and I wanted to guide people, and it just felt right. So I signed up to be in the seminary. I was going to work at the church in Pittsburgh, which is where I grew up, and that was going to be my path. And then my husband just screwed up the whole thing. I had been dating him for a number of years, and we realized that if I were to move to Pittsburgh, back to Pittsburgh, and work in the church and then go to the seminary during the day, and then he had his job, we were never going to see each other. And the relationship was significant enough at the time. Obviously, we've been together for like 24 years, 25 years at this point. But it was too important for us to just throw in the towel on. And so I was like, okay, what other options are available to us? And so I decided that I was going to go into advertising in New York City. So that's what I did, because that was something that I had always been considered or been considering. And I thought, let me rule that out before I commit to graduate school and all of this time and energy and money. And so that's what I did, and I went to New York City and worked in advertising for a couple of years, and I loved it. It was super fun, but it wasn't long term for me. It was tedious, it was long hours, just not my jam. So I did a couple other jobs here and there in between while I went to grad school, because it was at that point that I was like, all right, I know that my husband and I got engaged. I knew I was going to stay in the New York area with him, and I was looking for grad schools to become a therapist, because that's, like I had said, been that was my dream since I was 12. And so that's what I did, and I became a therapist. I started with marriage and family therapy, but then the licensing was really off in New York State. They kept pushing back the dates, and so I wanted to do something that was going to get me my ability to be licensed, because ultimately I wanted to be in private practice. So I got my social work degree. I wasn't a big fan of the curriculum itself, but I knew it was going to give me the flexibility to be able to do what I wanted to do. So I got that, and then I started my private practice almost right away after I got licensed. So I did that alongside the social work jobs that I had at inpatient hospitals, and I worked for a school for a while for kids who needed additional emotional support during the school day. So I did that for a while and built my private practice alongside that. My private practice was beautifully successful, and I made quite the name for myself in the community, which was beautiful. And then I was also working on call as for psychiatric emergencies at a local hospital, and I love that, but I was working too much and burning myself out. So although that was work that I really enjoyed doing, I wanted to prioritize my family and myself. And I ended up just working in my private practice and just taking on more clients. So I do have a history of being very type A and overworking. And that's something that I have recovered from. And I think I'll always have little snippets of here and there. But for the most part, I'm like chilling now. I'm like in my feminine energy, and I'm just like, whatever. I'm so relaxed. Everything flows now. Um, but yeah, I was very achievement oriented, very success oriented for most of my life. And the thing is, it's funny because I was taking care of myself. I was very conscious of boundaries and self-care and all of that. But I clearly, as an empath, which I didn't know I was at the time, and as a very sensitive person, which I've always known I am, I felt like I didn't protect my energy enough, let's say. I don't like the word protect because it implies that there's something really evil out there that's coming to get us, which is just not accurate. But I did feel the need I needed more, basically. I needed more self care. I needed more time for me. And I was a working mom. So that was not something that, I mean, it's something I took time for, but not to the level that I needed and the level that my soul desired. But at that time I wasn't really in touch with my energy, right? I wasn't in touch with energy work. So I didn't really know a lot about that. And I was really focused more on therapeutic strategies to assist myself. I always went to therapy off and on since the time that I was 7 when my parents got divorced. So it's always something that I had been involved in for myself, just as a support, if nothing else, with helping my clients, right? And being able to work through some of the vicarious trauma. And I believe that all therapists do need a coach or their own therapist to be able to support them with whatever they hear each day, right? No matter how strong your boundaries are, you're going to get impacted by what is being shared with you and exchanging energy with somebody else who particularly could be in a low space, especially those who are initially coming into therapy, right? So, about, I guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I started getting these really strong messages from the universe. So, my mom got sick, then my dad got sick, then my dad passed away, then, and each of these times, each of these kind of milestones, I pulled back more and more from working. I pulled back more and more and just, focused on my family and made my practice smaller and smaller. And then after my dad passed, I got pregnant with my third child. And that was really, we had decided just to have two, but I changed my mind. We changed our minds with the passing of my father because we were like, family is so important and we want as big of a family as we are comfortable managing because we want to have those intimate connections, right? And so we decided to have a third, and it was the hardest pregnancy. I was so sick through this pregnancy. There was like 3.5 months at the beginning of this pregnancy where I could not even stand without getting sick. I mean, it was just the worst. And so that whole pregnancy, I then had to cut back again with work and just continually reassessing, right, where I was going and what my goals were, because I was taking care of myself. And so then I had my third, and of course, things adjusted again because we had another human in our lives to take care of. And then I guess it was when she was about 15 months old, 14, 15 months old. Um, I was in the best shape of my life. I had started running and I was really feeling pretty good. I was happy. I mean, everything was great, honestly. Everything was great. I didn't even realize that there were obviously things that were taking a toll on me in the background that I didn't have awareness of. And I'm a very conscious, self aware, introspective, self-development kind of person, always have been. And yet there was so much that was existing outside of my awareness, right? There's so much that exists outside of all of our awareness. 95% of what goes through our minds exists in our subconscious, which we don't have conscious awareness of the vast majority of the time. So, so yeah, so I didn't even have awareness. And I started getting kind of achy, like my joints started to hurt. And I was like, I wonder if I have Lyme's or something. Like I need to reach out to my doctor to see if, I should get a Lyme's test because I just started getting kind of fatigued and my joints were hurting. And so I thought that for a couple of days. And then I woke up. I will never forget, it was August 3rd of that year. So it must have been 2016, I believe it was. Yeah. And I woke up and I didn't feel well. And I was supposed to take the kids to camp. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, I'm not, I must have like a little bug or something. And so I took my temperature. I had a 99 and I went downstairs and I was helping the kids get stuff ready for camp because it was summertime, obviously, and they were getting ready for camp. And I said to my husband, I was like, I don't feel well. And then I felt like I was going to get sick. And so I was like, okay, I must have a stomach bug. So I told him, can you please drive the kids to camp? So he's like, sure, absolutely. So I went upstairs and I laid down and I started feeling worse and worse and worse, faster and faster. Like it was just getting exponentially worse. And I was like, what is happening? And I kept taking my temperature. And my husband was gone for about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, taking the kids to camp. By the time he got back, my fever was at 105, and I was like my whole body was convulsing. I was like in this whole body. It felt like a seizure, but I knew it wasn't because I was conscious. Um, and my whole body was shaking. I was super dizzy. I felt really, really nauseated, and I had this super high fever, and I felt really weak. So he got back, and I said to him, I was like, I think I need to go to the hospital. And he's like, okay. And I had never been to the hospital other than having my kids. I had never been in the hospital. And so I was like, yeah, I think I need to go. And he's like, okay, can I drive you? And I said, I don't think I can make it. Like, I don't think I can make it. I could hardly speak at that time. I had to go to the bathroom, but I couldn't get up to do that. And so we called 911. I started getting sicker and sicker. They came and they couldn't get me to stay upright. And so they had to carry me out on a stretcher, which, they're well equipped for. But my poor husband, I felt terrible because my 1-year old is screaming from her crib. And all I'm thinking, because I was still nursing her at the time, all I'm thinking is like, my baby, like, who's going to take care of my baby? Like, who's going to nurse my baby? I have to take care of my baby. Thank goodness that I had pumped enough that I had a bunch of milk in the freezer for her. But I was still like, I didn't, this was the first time I'd left my baby, since she was born, and I was freaking out. And my poor husband had two people in the hospital, one who had a terminal illness and the other one who was in a pretty awful situation. And here I am being carried off in a stretcher. So I just looked at him and I was like, "I'm so sorry." And he's like, "Oh my gosh." I just felt terrible because I was so worried about him being stressed. And so they carried me to the ambulance, and before they put me in, I started seeing all of these people. Like, I was clearly hallucinating, and I didn't even know, like, none of these people are around, but I was like calling their names, and my husband's like, "Who are you calling? Like, there's nobody here." Um, and I was calling their names, and they put me in the ambulance, and they said, "Take the fastest route to get there." And they hooked me up to an IV, and they was checking my vitals and everything. And then at one point, she checked my blood pressure, the EMT, and she looked forward to the front and said, "How many minutes do we have left?" And they said, 8. And she's like, "We don't have that long, and you need to find a way to get there faster." And she just keeps telling me that I need to breathe, and my legs, and I couldn't feel my legs or my arms at this point. They were completely numb. And it was the first time that I started thinking, like, is this like it for me? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Because things seem to be shutting down really quickly for me. Um, and so I got to the hospital, and they immediately quarantined me because they thought I had meningitis because I had a very stiff neck. So they quarantined me and they started doing all these tests, and then they decided, no, okay, she doesn't have meningitis. They ruled that out. So they took off all their hazmat suits. They were, doing chest x-rays and all these other tests. I mean, you name it, I had the test done. And then the doctor came in and she's like, okay, we really think very strongly that this is a tick-borne illness. We're still looking into it. We're waiting for your blood work to come back, etc. And just kind of chill out. We'll be with you in a minute. But I was still convulsing, like I was still shaking violently. And I said, this has to stop. Like, I can't tolerate this anymore. So they were giving me a bunch of medication to try to slow that down. At this point, my husband shows up. He's next to me, holding my hand, and he was trying to have a conversation with me, and all I kept saying was, "It's okay, it's okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, it's okay, it's okay," because I couldn't really function at all. I mean, I was just like laying there. I was just trying to keep myself stable. And so the doctor comes in and she's like, "Well, I think we're going to discharge you." And I'm like, "Okay." I still have like, at that point, I think I had like 103 or something. My fever had come down a couple degrees. And I was like, all right, like, how am I supposed to function at home like this? And so I was kind of curious as to what was going on. They had already started me on IV antibiotics. And I have to say, to this day, I'm so grateful that I live in New York, because at the time that I got this was sepsis. She came back in and said, "We're admitting you because your lactic acid came back at a 4.0, which is sepsis." And my blood pressure was really low. So they admitted me to the septic unit. But I never even found out I had sepsis until I was discharged. Like, nobody was telling me what was going on because they weren't able to find the origin of it. And I think they were just so confused, like, with my body, and they had no idea what was going on. But at this point, they said they were going to admit me. But at the time in 2016, there were only 2 or 3 states in the entire US that had sepsis protocols. and New York was one of them, thank God. And the nurse came up to me and she was like, "Why did you wait so long to call 911?" And I was like, "I didn't. It was like 30 minutes. My my temperature went from 99 to 105 in 30 minutes." She's like, "If you had called 30 minutes later, we would not there's nothing we could have done for you," which was scary. Like life flashing before your eyes kind of stuff. Um, and just completely shocking because I was literally in the best shape of my life. I was like feeling great. I was eating well, I was exercising, I was happy. I was like, what the hell is going on? And so anyway, they admitted me to the sepsis unit, and thank God they had already started me on a sepsis protocol because I was in a New York hospital. So thank goodness I had been able to receive that right away, like right from the beginning. Um, and then once I was discharged, and you know, my hospitalization was not fun at all. I mean, what hospitalizations are, but they had every specialist that you can imagine coming in to test me, and they were able to say, no, this was not tick-borne, but we're not able to find the source of the sepsis. They still, to this day, have not found. They never found the source of the sepsis. So they sent me to an immunologist. I went to actually every single specialist that has ever existed. If you can name a test, I've had it done um, over that couple year period. But anyway, so they sent me to an immunologist who sent me down to New York City. Again, thank goodness that I live in New York. So thankful. I was grateful. Like all I did was just strings of gratitude for like just through this entire process. Because they said, listen, you know, the top international research facility for immunology is in New York City at Mount Sinai. Like it would be silly for you to not go down there and get tested and at least get evaluated. And so I went down there, and they're a research facility. So when you go to a research facility, they have the ability to test many more things in your blood work than they do when you just go to a hospital or to the doctor because they're researchers. So they were able to test a bunch of things, and they found that 3 out of the 4 proteins that your immune system, excuse me, your immune system uses to fight infection were deficient, and one was practically non-existent for me, and the other 2 were very low. And then they found that my cells, the cells that you have, the B cells that mature with your immune system, had stopped growing. They no longer were maturing. And so based on all of this information that they put together, he said, you know, you clearly have CVID, which is called common variable immunodeficiency. It's called a primary immunodeficiency because it exists from birth. It's not something you acquire over time. They did a lot of tests to rule out to make sure it wasn't something I acquired, and definitely confirmed that this was something that I was born with. And it's not something that they test for on a regular basis. And nobody in my family had it that they knew of. So it wasn't something that we had our eyes on. But he said, you know, listen, you know, you need to be on plasma infusions and you're going to need to be on them indefinitely. So I started doing plasma infusions in New York City once a month via IV, and the side effects were so bad, it was hard to tell the difference between that and the symptoms that were residual from the sepsis. So finally they ended up switching me over to subcutaneous infusions about a year and a half later. So now I do subcutaneous plasma infusions at home myself. I just put the needles right in my belly myself. I had a nurse come to show me how to do it a few times. And now I do that every Friday afternoon. I chill and I hook myself up and I offer myself immunity. So, big thanks to everyone who donates plasma because it offers me the opportunity to be here today and to prevent dangerous illnesses like sepsis. It doesn't protect me from everything. It doesn't protect me from viruses. It only protects me from bacteria, but it's something, right? It also has anti-inflammatory properties, which really helps with my neurological system because the sepsis did a lot of damage to my neurological system. And I had originally after sepsis, I had something called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. And so that's what was putting me in the ambulance multiple times after that first visit with sepsis. I went back several times to the hospital because my blood pressure would tank and I would almost pass out or I would collapse a lot. I was dizzy for almost 3 years, so I couldn't drive. And I would fall a lot because my balance was really off and I was very confused and you know, all the lovely neurological symptoms, a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, nausea, all that lovely stuff. So I was able to cure myself of the POTS by purchasing a recumbent bike, because what I did was I did a lot of research around how to heal from POTS, because what would happen is my heart rate would fly. I mean, it would just go way up, because it's a dysfunction of your autonomic nervous system, which controls your digestive processes, your breath. So it's very short of breath all the time, to the point where I could hardly speak, and confusion, all of those things. It regulates all of your automatic processes. So this was what was most debilitating for me. And so I started researching it, and there's a facility in Texas where you can actually go and stay for a number of weeks. But I didn't want to leave my kids for that long. So I looked into what they offer in their program. And one of the things was using the recumbent bike to be able to stabilize, like pump blood back up to your heart, and to be able to like take some pressure off of it, right? And to regulate your heart rate. So, and your autonomic nervous system. So I, instead of going to cardiac rehab 3 times a week, which would have cost me like $60 a week for, I think it was like 8 to 10 weeks or something like that. I just bought a recumbent bike because it was cheaper, and I didn't have to drive a freaking hour every day back and forth and leave my kids to do cardiac rehab. So instead, I just bought a recumbent bike, and I did it at home, and I followed the regimen, and it was brutal. It was brutal. It was not easy at all. I felt so sick. It was so hard, but I did it, and I cured myself of the pot. So I'm like celebrating that until the ends of the earth. I never took medication for it, because I really wanted to listen to my body. I was so freaked out that I had gotten sepsis without like, I didn't see it coming. Like I didn't know anything that was going on. And it just totally freaked me out. And so I vowed to be really in tune with my body even more. I've always been very in tune with my body, but even more so to be able to be preventive, right, going forward. And so, um, so anyway, so I was able to release the POTS, which was great, and what was left over was autonomic neuropathy, which is something that I still am still recovering from. It's something that I'm still healing from. That results in a lot of leg pain, and the dizziness is gone. Yay! But I do have leg pain and some shortness of breath and nausea, and get a little confused here and there, but for the most part, that's gone. Um, and just fatigue and weakness that can come up in phases, right? And cycles. And so what I do is, I remember, I think it was about 3 years after I got sepsis, I'm pretty sure, or 2.5, something like that. I went to my neurologist because I had been sitting with a client, a therapy client, and I started getting really confused. I had trouble understanding what she was saying. I had trouble even creating sentences, and I could no longer stand up. And so I called my husband to pick me up at work. And I went to the neurologist, scared out of my mind, because for a good 3 weeks, I could not even like, I had to take time off work, and I could not even like play chess with my son or like have conversations with my kids, because I was so out of it and so confused. And I said to him, what do I do? And he just said, you're just going to continue to decompensate. I'm really sorry, but it's just the nature of autonomic neuropathy. And it's funny because it was the first time out of all the specialists and everything that I'd been to that I decided, yeah, no, I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. Like, I do not see that for my future. I do not feel that for myself. I don't see myself decompensating. I see a very different vision. And that's when I started researching all of the different self-healing tools that I could get my hands on. I went to a naturopath. I started taking a ton of supplements. I cut out gluten. I cut out dairy. Um, and I got attuned to Reiki. I started to do Reiki with other people, of course, for healing, which was very, very soothing. I started meditating on a daily basis, and I realized that when I wouldn't meditate, I wouldn't feel as well. And I'm like, intriguing. Okay, there's something to this. So I started looking more and more into energy healing, and mindfulness work and meditative work and spiritual work. And the more that I learned, the more that I was healing. And it was funny because when I found the Akashic Records, I was a huge skeptic, huge skeptic. I didn't understand it. I felt like it was just, this spiritual world, when you first get into it, is just, it's so big, and it can feel so overwhelming. And it's like, all right, what do I start with? who do I trust? Especially in the internet. It's like, who do I trust? Like all these people is a world that I've never navigated before. You know, which route do I take, right? And so I tried a bunch of different modalities. And again, all along kept saying, I am so grateful for the fact that I have the resources to be able to pay for these alternative modalities. And it was at that point that I decided, when I started realizing how much impact it was having on me, it was at that point that I decided, you know what? I need to create a charity for people with chronic illness to be able to afford, because so many of my clients had chronic illness or chronic issues that were going on that they didn't have the funds or the resources to be able to do the kinds of things I was doing, and I was so fortunate to be able to do that. And so I said, all right, I'm going to start a charity. So I called up and I spoke with a lawyer for 2 hours, and he was wonderful. And he gave me all the information that I needed to be able to start this charity. And I got off the phone with like my head spinning because I was just like, oh my gosh, this is huge. Like, this is so much bigger than I can do right now. Because I still really wasn't feeling well. And so I was like, all right, this is way too big for me right now. This is going to be my long term goal. So I was like, all right, but I need to start introducing this to people because this is gold, right? What I realized is that when I started working with the Akashic Records and being in that space, I would have no pain, no symptoms. And then when I was done and closed the records, I would be super energized, energy that I hadn't had since I got sepsis. And so I was like, okay. And my husband even said, who's not a believer in this stuff, he's like, I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it because it's working so well. Like, you are so much better. You're improving so much. And I was like, I know. And it didn't make sense to me. Like, I didn't understand why I was improving, but I was. And then I started noticing shifts in my clients and in my loved ones. And I was like, okay, I need to start sharing this with the world. So I started creating this business. I just opened up a Facebook group, Room for Healing, which is my private Facebook group, and just started sharing some of what I had learned. Like, I started with affirmations, learning about the moon cycles, working with the emotion code, inner child work. And I started realizing that as I was doing this work for my physical healing, my anxiety was going away. I was more confident than I had ever been in my life. I had so much energy and clarity. And I was like, wow, this stuff is gold. Like, I was like, this is the stuff that my clients need, right? It operated at a depth that I had never found in the therapy world or in the medical field. And so, this stuff that I had been working through for years that I'd been able to maintain and kind of keep a pulse on, I was able to access at so much deeper of a level by doing this work. And it would last. Like, it wasn't just a band aid approach. It was like, once I shifted that belief, or once I healed that part of my ancestry or my past life or something, and I understood the context from where these things came from, I was able to release a lot of self blame. I was able to have an understanding and a level of connection and intimacy with my loved ones and my ancestry that I had never had before. And it really opened my eyes to a completely different level of healing, a layer of healing that I had not been exposed to prior to this experience. So I, at this point, let me know if you guys have any questions as they're coming up, by the way. But at this point, I was scared because I knew that my life was changing in a very significant way. And this job that I had created since, I'd been dreaming up since I was 12, my dream job that I had and was wildly successful in, a waiting list for, I think it was 7 years. I had a waiting list in my traditional therapy practice. And I was like, how do I give this up? Like, I have a great income. I have a great connection with my clients. I have an awesome name in the community. I'm very, very good at what I do. I should keep doing this, right? So I realized I was thinking kind of black and white, and I was like, all right, let me start to just integrate some of this into my work. And just for those clients who are open and receptive, we can start working in this capacity and doing some traditional therapy and incorporating some of this other work into it. So we did, and the shifts in them were absolutely mind blowing, like a light switch, like a light switch. And then it just felt irresponsible for me to not scream this from the rooftops because I'm like, I have this modality. I know exactly what's going to help them. And yet I'm not sharing it because I'm afraid that, oh, I'm in this mental health box, I'm in this therapy box. I'm not supposed to be talking about spirituality, or I'm not supposed to be going outside of the box, right? Too far, anyway. I have to follow all the rules, right? And so for me, it was I integrated it to a degree, but then I started realizing that I no longer believed in the mental health piece anymore. I no longer believed in the diagnostics. I do think that there's a place for therapy, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just one layer. I think it's a good place to start working with some of your cognitions and your thoughts to be shifting things. But then once you've done that and once you've kind of stabilized in that area, you got to go deeper if you have chronic issues that have existed for 2 years or more, because I promise you, it's just going to keep coming back. And that's what I experienced. I always said, I'm just going to be an anxious person. Like so many people in my family, I think everybody in my family has anxiety. Like everybody has anxiety. So I was like, I'm just going to be anxious for the rest of my life. And that's just who I am. And I was okay with it. I really was. I wasn't like in victim mentality around it. Although I did have victim mentality after sepsis for a good while, but I worked myself out of that one. And now help other people notice that and have awareness of it and be able to prevent it. But yeah, that's one of my missions here really, is to assist people with being preventive and knowing all of the different layers at which illness can present, or at which just being out of alignment with who we are meant to be and why we are here on this planet, right? Being out of alignment with that is going to start leading you down a path that leads to dis-ease of some kind, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, or whether it's cognitive, right? Mentally. So for me, it's been realizing that any of those statements that we say to ourselves that we think are in stone, like, oh, I'm just going to be an anxious person for the rest of my life. They're not in stone ever. Everything is energy. Everything is moving. Everything is shifting all the time. We have the ability to shift our physical bodies, our thoughts, our feelings. We have the ability to choose. We have so much power, and we're not aware of most of it. We're not aware of most of our power. And sadly, you know, most of us end up in this space where we have to hit a freaking wall and be so sick to the point where we can't even function to be able to wake up and say, all right, I'm going to make a change in my life. Right. And I know that I would not have listened prior to this because I'm freaking stubborn as they come. Right. And so, and a lot of us are, we're human beings, we get agendas in our minds and we get stuck on things. And so it's being able to be open to possibility, open to the fact that magic and miracles happen all the time. And when people would say that to me years ago, I would roll my eyes and judge them, right? And yet I am one, right? We are all miracles. We are all magical. We all have the ability to transform and create our reality that whatever way we want. This was a concept that I knew nothing about and never would have believed without experiencing it for myself. And don't get me wrong, some people do need to experience it for themselves in order to be able to wake up and smell the cappuccino, right? But for those who are open and who are willing to listen and receive messages of the fact that they're meant to follow a different path than they thought, the fact that something is going on under the surface that they might not have an awareness of, being open to that is life changing. And for any of the people that are willing to receive that, I am here to guide them, because I always tell people, I'm like, don't be like Laura Mazzotta. Don't get sepsis. Don't wait until you get sepsis to wake up, right? And love yourself to the depths of your being. I was engaging in self-care. I was taking care of myself, but I wasn't taking care of myself to the degree that I needed. And you know why? Because I had a lot of shame around that. I had a lot of guilt around that. I didn't feel deserving of it at some level. And yes, I have a history of abuse. I have a history of sexual abuse. I have a history of um, verbal abuse and emotional abuse. And none of those things are excuses. None of those things deserve blame. Because the fact is, I'm an empath. The fact is, I've been an empath since I was born. I just didn't know it until the past 5 years. I always knew I was sensitive, but I didn't know I was an empath, which means that we really feel other people's feelings. We take them on into our energy field. We almost carry out and carry their pain for them, which is a very codependent pattern if you don't know how to manage it. So that's what I fell into, a lot of codependency, which wasn't good for other people and it wasn't good for me. And it certainly disempowered me. So we have the choice. And I remember right after I had sepsis, I was seeing a therapist at the time, and she said to me, "What do you think the spiritual significance is of all of this?" And I wanted to be like, "Nothing." Because at the time, this was before my eyes were opened, and it felt like I was being blamed, like I created this in some way. I did. I created it all. My soul created it all. My soul signed up for this experience, no matter how much it sucks in human form. And it doesn't suck. I have a great freaking life. And you know what? My life is phenomenal now versus before when I was happy and fit and eating well and all of that. Now I'm all of those things. I don't know how fit I am. I'll get there. But now I'm all of those lovely things times 100. I am like phenomenal. I just didn't even know that this existed. I didn't know this level of phenomenal was available to me. And what I learned was how much my body is a tool and a cue and a signal for what's really going on under the surface that I needed to heal and clear that I was holding from past lifetimes and from my ancestors and all of the goodness. And these are all of the layers that I have been peeling back and working through over the years and have now gotten to the point where no, you don't have to be fully healed to help other people with this. You help people that are a couple steps behind you on your journey. And then I seek help from people who are a couple steps ahead of me. And we all help each other. And we collaborate and we learn and we move forward and we expand into better and better and better and better and better versions of ourselves. So don't feel ashamed that you need extra TLC. Don't feel embarrassed that you need or want extra time and love and attention to take care of you. Because taking care of me is a full-time damn job, but you know what? It's a job that I am embracing more and more every day, and I don't see it as a job. I see it as very self-loving. I see it as very healing for myself, for my family line, because I'm offering myself the kind of patience and love and acceptance that so many people don't offer themselves. I'm putting myself first. I never would have done that ever in the past because there's somebody out there who's suicidal that needs my help. There's somebody out there who needs X, Y, and Z. I'm always the person who would say, "Oh, you need it? Yeah, message me outside of business hours," right? And I changed my boundaries over time. I increased my boundaries and all of that, and it didn't matter because again, I'm an empath. I was born an empath. It's nobody's fault. I interpreted the events that occurred in a way that impacted me more deeply and shifted my energy more because I was so receptive to other people's energy because I'm an empath. So people say, oh, I just lost it because I wrote it in my journal the other night. It was, oh yeah, because one of the mantras that helped me a lot in my healing was, oh my goodness gracious, keeps leaving my mind. Oh, is this even mine to carry? Right? Like asking that question, is this even mine to carry? Right? And so I look back and I'm like, it wasn't these other people in my life, these other people that were in my life that I was blaming because of this, and that happened to me. It wasn't theirs to carry my reaction to it, my sensitivity, my absorption of what happened, right? Regardless, I was present in that experience and I had an impact. So that was the other piece of my healing, was just like taking full responsibility for everything that's unfolded on my journey, for everything that has unfolded in my path, for my relationships, good, bad, and different. So let me know if you guys have questions. This video is really a gift to a lot of my clients who have been wanting to know more about my story. There's a lot more to my story that I'm sure I'm missing, so I may have to do this in parts for you guys, just in terms of different tools and strategies that I've used to heal. And, just some of those limiting beliefs that have come forward for me, um, that interfered with my ability to get better faster. And, when you get sick for that long, I was sick for years, years. You're welcome, Carrie. Thanks for being here. I was sick for years, and you get depressed. You get depressed and you get frustrated. And that's when I was in my victim mentality, And like I was so pissed at myself because I was like, dude, did I do this? Like did I not hear the messages from the universe? Did I work myself to the bone? Did all of these things. The fact is, this is what my soul chose. Everything aligned for a reason. It aligned because I was meant to learn these deep lessons. I was meant to guide people in this way. I was meant to be a light worker. I've always been a light worker. I was just a light worker in a therapist capacity, right? And when it got to the point that I didn't feel like basically everything that was coming out of my mouth to my clients was all spiritual tools and spiritual in nature, and I was like, yeah, I got to transition from traditional therapy because I just no longer believe in diagnostics. I believe in the fact that we're all here to have unique qualities about us, so that Joe can do this, and Carrie can do this, and Katie can do this, and I can do that, and then we're a well-oiled machine all put together because we all have different strengths, right? Rather than you're deficient in this and this is what I'm going to label you. We're all just here with unique gifts and talents, and to be able to understand those about each other so that we can work seamlessly as one, right? That's what I'm here to encourage and advocate. So, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching this live or on the replay. If you're here on the replay, just type hashtag replay. Right now, the current opening that I have is for my certification program in the Akashic Records. Even if you don't want certification, there's a lot of people who have gone through this program who are just doing it for themselves and their loved ones, because this was the most comprehensive, this is the most comprehensive program to be able to teach you all of these skills in the space of the Akashic Records, how to use it, how to tune into your soul, your soul's purpose, what you're meant for, come to a very deep, easeful, graceful acceptance of who you are, of the mix of experiences that make you you and that have created this lifetime for you, and to learn all of these healing tools so that you can do this for yourself. That's what I love so much about this work versus traditional therapy. It's like wildly empowering, because you're sourcing, you're healing from within what already exists within you. It's not outside of you. And when you learn how to access this, it comes to you so naturally that you don't even have to sit around and think and rack your brain as to what decision do I make, or where do I go next, or blah, 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 right? And you're consistently aligned to the space that will always give you the answers that are in your best interest, that are in your highest good, that help you move forward on your path. Teaching people how to do this and watching them go teach other people is so immensely rewarding. And it's exciting because it's helping more and more and more and more people every single day. So I'm going to have my team drop the link to the RISE certification program in the comments. Check it out. Reach out to me if you have questions. I know it can be scary to invest in yourself. I've been there, done that so many times. I also know that it's my source of one of my sources of biggest change and of quantum leaping, really taking big steps rather than all the tiny little microscopic steps that I would take before because I was scared and I was perfectionistic and I didn't trust enough. So reach out to me if you have questions about it. The website lists out exactly what we're doing and all the modules that we go through. You'll learn anything from past lives through future life work to astral travel to activating your light body, which is really your soul, to be able to forward yourself as a light being and not just as a human who is stuck in X, Y, and Z. Okay, I promise you, this will this will unleash everything within you that you've been really that you feel like you've lost sight of or that you've been waiting to see. Really ignites that flame and allows you to really align with who you are, to be able to heal yourself and your loved ones, and even have a living, create a living, teaching other people to do the same thing. I can't even tell you the people that I've connected with on this journey have been the most loving and the most giving and heart centered, service based people. So you'll also meet your tribe. You'll also have that sense of belonging and connection that you have felt like you're missing. So let me know if you guys have questions. I'll drop that link for you. And thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.